Good evening. Welcome to the big story. I'm Regina Lay.
I'm Gretchen Mo.
And I'm Sean Yao.
Tonight's big stories. Former President Rodrigo Duterte snubbed the House Quad Committee's hearing on the war on drugs again, calling it a mere political ploy to indict him for crimes he didn't commit.
Typhoon Marce makes landfall and batters Cagayan and areas around province, which is still reeling from Typhoon Leon.
And U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris concedes the election, urging her supporters to accept the results. Some Filipino Americans are worried that Donald Trump will crack down on immigration right away, as promised.
Former President Rodrigo Duterte snubbed the House Quad Committee hearing on the war on drugs today, contrary to his promise to show up. Instead, he wrote a letter questioning the integrity of the panel.
He said the inquiry was a mere political ploy meant to indict him for crimes he did not commit. This angered the lawmakers, of course.
But they did carry on with the hearing, and one big thing that came out of it was former Customs Officer Jimmy Guban saying that many of his colleagues had been killed by a so-called Davao Mafia. Marian Enriquez with the report.
He has promised us, this committee, through his letter, that after November 1, he will be present in today's hearing. Ano to? Naglulukuhan tayo dito?
House Committee on Public Accounts Chairman Stephen Caraps Paduano could not contain his frustration when former President Rodrigo Duterte failed to attend the Quad Committee's hearing on the war on drugs once again. But now, in his letter to the committee, Duterte said he doubts the integrity and independence of the Quadcom. He believes, too, that the hearing is a political ploy to charge him for crimes he did not commit. Duterte insisted he has already said everything he needs to during the Senate's counterpart hearing.
Kung hindi tayo naglulukuhan dito, natatakot siya na pumunta dito?
Recalled that at the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee hearing, Duterte admitted the existence of a Davao death squad and said that he ordered police to encourage suspects to fight back to justify their killing or, in short, nanlaban. Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa defended this by saying, joke, 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 but the Quadcom wasn't amused by this.
Biro lamang daw. But I ask you, my friends and my colleagues, I ask you, who makes jokes under oath? Who laughs while mothers bury their sons? Who finds humor in this horror? This is no laughing matter.
We may be accused of providing entertainment and likened to a gag show, but who is laughing? On the contrary, the one who said that must be so full of himself that he didn't notice that the joke was on him.
Meanwhile, former Customs Intelligence Officer Jimmy Guban wasn't able to contain his tears during the hearing. He and dismissed Colonel Eduardo Acierto linked the Duterte family, former Presidential Economic Advisor Michael Yang, and Chinese businessman Alan Lim to the illegal drug trade in the country. Because of this, according to Guban, De La Rosa and Duterte themselves set up a reward to have him killed. Guban and Acierto were lucky to have escaped, but he says many of their comrades have already fallen to the so-called Davao Mafia.
Si Colonel Pardo po namatay, si Captain Perote, si Agent Hernan Abarrio, kasama ko sa customs, patay. Dalawa rin ang namatay sa akin. Sa kanya, ilan ang namatay? Dahil po dyan, sa Davao Mafia, and their purpose to save the Queen, in order to become the next president. That is how, ganun nila ginawa. Lahat patayan.
Guban did not say who the Queen is, but there have been speculation that Vice President Sara Duterte may be interested in the presidency in 2028, which she has repeatedly denied. Senator Go also vehemently denied the allegations. In a statement, he said, parang sirang plaka na si Colonel Eduardo Acierto. These are all recycled, rehashed, perjured, and baseless allegations. Hindi ko kilala yang si Mr. Acierto. Hindi ako interesado sa kanya. Wala akong ideya at all sa sinasabi niya. Meanwhile, the Quad Committee has also issued a subpoena for Senator Go's aide, Ermina Espino, otherwise known as Muking, for failing to attend the hearing. Espino attended the hearing in Senate on October 28, though, wherein she denied that she was the one handing out reward money to cops involved in extrajudicial killings. It was also retired Police Colonel Royina Garma who implicated her in all this. For News 5, I'm Marian Enriquez. We are One News.
Still in the House of Representatives, in another room, the House Committee on Good Government and Public Accountability also resumed their investigation into the alleged fund misuse of the OVP, or the Office of the Vice President. In an interview with our sister program Storycon, Committee Chairman and Manila 3rd District Representative Joel Chua said the panel will just need a few more hearings, after which they will be ready to come up with a comprehensive committee report. They won't even need the Vice President for these hearings, he said. Apart from laws they're looking to amend, Rep. Chua also says that the committee will include recommendations on whether there are enough grounds to impeach the Vice President.
Definitely. Well, ako sa tingin ko, mga isa, dalawang hearing na lang to at most siguro at tatlo. Pero we will come up with the
committee report.
Well, hindi na naman po yan ang magiging basis namin.
Yes, sir.
Magiging laman po ng committee report, number 1, kung ano po yung mga laws na sa tingin po namin dapat amyendahan.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Number 2, if we will, kung merong grounds for impeachment complaint. Number 3, what are we going to do if we are going to file impeachment or we will file a case against the Vice President. So lahat po yan pag-uusapan po ng mga committee members.
No Vice President Duterte at the Good Government probe, and no former President Rodrigo Duterte either at the Quad Committee hearing. Let's discuss this a little bit more. Our first guest tonight is Lanao del Sur 1st District Representative Zia Adiong. Good evening, Congressman, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening, ladies, and thank you for having me.
We know that you're in the middle of a hearing right now, but let's talk first about what happened yesterday at the Good Government and Public Accountability hearing. Pagpasensyahan niyo po, uunahin ko lang dahil maraming lumabas kahapon, lalong-lalo na, about the deficient receipts on the confidential funds that were given by the Office of the Vice President. I believe there have been 158 ARs that are being questioned right now. Tama po ba na meron dun isang AR received by a certain Mary Grace Piatos? Totoo ba yun? At ano pa yung mga deficiencies of those receipts?
Well, yun nga, it's actually Congressman Rog Gutierrez who discovered na there seems to be discrepancies in the receipts, no? And one of the receipts happened to bear the name of Mary Grace Piatos, which when we ask about COA, they simply could not validate and could not simply give us the accurate answer as to how they go about with this 158 receipts. And it's still an ongoing discussion. I believe there are questions and there are documents that were also requested from COA for us to verify really what are these receipts. And unfortunately, only COA can provide us the information because supposedly those accountable officers from the Department of Education, there were 7 of them who were supposed to attend the hearing and who are actually the very individuals who may have direct knowledge on how this utilization of the confidential funds is being utilized and how they prepare, in terms of the utilization report, happen to be, continues to refuse attending the committee. And so we are always somehow hitting roadblocks, that's the problem. That's actually the biggest challenge that the Committee on Good Government is facing right now. We couldn't get an actual information as to how these funds are being handled, how these funds are being utilized, how these funds are being released, and how the Department of Education, came out with the report, with all of these attached receipts that they have submitted to COA, and we were able to gather all these receipts, and yun nga, we found out that it's kind of, some of the receipts have names which are quite laughable, no? Just to say the least, no? Nakakatuwa yung mga ganung pangalan. So we hope that we sent another invitation to these individuals, to the employees of the Department of Education. Hopefully by the next committee hearing, they would be able to attend.
I'm curious,
Yes.
Kong Zia. So they didn't go. Everyone, I think, by now has already read the reasons for not going. They believe it's politicized. They were asking, of course, ano bang legislation yung tinitingnan ninyo at gusto nyong amyendahan bago kami pumunta para makapag-review kami. We read all of that yesterday. My question to you is, what's the plan now? It looks like there's a stalemate, right? So you're going to invite them again. If they don't agree to come, what's next for them? Contempt, subpoena, show cause order? What's the plan of the committee?
Well, right now we are still contemplating on probably providing them another chance for them to attend. We haven't discussed really about whether we would send them or we would issue I guess we have already adopted and approved the subpoena ad testificandum, no, for them to appear before the committee. But then again, that the question really is that it's not really, parang ang mangyayari is they would actually provide themselves the chance to clear these allegations. I guess it's for their advantage. It's to the advantage of all of these 7 individuals, should they decide to finally come, kasi we can actually elicit information from other agencies naman eh. So I believe if they refuse to attend the committee hearing, that's to their detriment. Kasi we can ask naman COA and we can ask other resource persons to collaborate. Yun nga lang, that would be perfect opportunity sana to to shed light and enlighten the committee kung paano ito nagawa yung pagkakataon na nakaka-release sila ng ganitong receipts, because in each agency, in the partner agency, in the utilization of the confidential funds, you have there the AFP. The AFP has already given also their testimonies. That's a regular program that they do.
Yeah.
So they don't actually need any confidential funds from the Department of Education. Similarly with other agencies na pinaggamitan nila, pinartner nila for the release and for the utilization of the confidential funds, have already also given their own testimonies,
Right.
which does not go well with how the justification from the office of from the Department of Education as reflected in the receipts that they have transmitted to COA.
Right.
So it's really to the detriment if they keep on refusing.
Congressman,
attending this meeting.
do I take it to mean then that you've never seen problematic receipts like this from any other agency?
No.
And second to that, COA did say that the DepEd's response was they're just typographical or clerical errors. Do you not accept that?
Well, it's a COA utilization report. I mean, for every agency, it's very important for you to prepare all the attached documents that are required for you to be able to provide the COA with the necessary basis para masabi nila na that the budget of your office is utilized properly, efficiently, and according to the rules. So I don't think you should. Well, if that's what they are saying, then I think dapat kung sino man yung in charge doon sa pagbibigay ng mga receipts, they're doing a very sloppy work. Kasi it reflects the kind of it reflects the kind of yung degree of yung work result ng kanilang trabaho, which basically reflects yung paano magtrabaho yung kanilang mga empleyado, which
Zia?
in a way, if you look at it, puts the credibility of their agency and the department in question.
Okay.
So hindi siya, well, I would presume that it's a typographical error, pero it does not happen kung sino yung in charge doon sa pagbibigay ng liquidation report. Should be a master of doing that. I mean, it should be a person who really knows how to do the job. Kasi importante yung mga liquidation and utilization ng budget mo eh. You don't just put somebody there who does not know how to prepare the attachment, who does not know how to actually, provide all the necessary documents that COA requires for your agency. So, I mean, to me, that's justification and reason is quite childish in a way because
Wait, sorry, and then just very quickly, you've never seen problematic receipts from other agencies? Just very quickly.
we haven't. No. Well, we haven't as far as I'm concerned. I guess as far as the committee is concerned, we haven't seen any receipts with that kind of with that kind of problem. And we're talking of COA here, the agency whose agency has been doing the auditing, etc. So ibig sabihin that the primary mandate of COA is really to audit and to check and to vet and to verify all the attachments needed to actually report what has been the way the funds are being utilized. So ibig sabihin, it's the word of the COA versus the words of the DepEd official.
I think Kong Zia, kasi
in case of utilization report, we do give primacy to what the COA is saying in their observation. Of course, that's their job.
it's not kasi usual, no, I think, Kong Zia, na kinikilatis ng ganito yung confidential funds and intelligence funds. Usually, pinagbibigyan na yan. So, you're right. I don't think I've ever, sa tagal ko nanonood ng news, na may talagang hinihimay ng mga intelligence funds down to the audit level. But let's take it from the other side. Vice President Sara Duterte has said this is politicized. So have her staff members, the 7 that you summoned to the hearing who didn't show up. She's also mentioned the word impeachment, and now it's kind of being used more and more often. Are there really any plans to impeach the Vice President that you know of? Representative Joel Chua already said, wala pa naman daw. But because tinanong siya, then he had to give an answer. And that's where it came from. And as far as he knows, it's the Vice President who first said the word impeachment. Sa pagkakaalam niyo po, Kong Zia, meron po ba talagang any active efforts?
Well, unang-una, no, you cannot accuse COA of politicizing the issue. They're just doing their job. Wala namang interest ng COA dyan eh. That's actually their mandate.
I think she meant the House of Representatives and not COA.
You mean the House of Representatives? Yes. No, we're just actually doing our mandate because there seems to be a problem. Unang-una, it's not us who really audited these funds. No, it's the COA who audited the confidential funds, and they came out with the disallowance notice of disallowances and yung AOM nila, yung notice of ano nila, no, yung what you call this, apart from the notice of disallowances, yung yung initial pa na binibigay nila na notices nila na something really is wrong. And before it reaches the stage of for the COA to to release yung mga disallowances, may mga initial pa sila na binibigay, and so it's really the basis of the committee hearings. It's based on what the COA has been reporting, and so I don't think I don't see anything that would lead us to believe that these are being used to attack, politically, the office of the Vice President. Because unang-una, it's not really the Committee on Good Government that actually did all the auditing. It's actually the COA, and that's the reason why we've been asking the office of, the Department of Office of the Vice President and the former employees of the Department of Education, so that we can finally, listen to them and explain to them bakit nagkaroon ng mga ganitong discrepancies dun sa mga receipts, bakit nagkaroon ng mga errors, may mga typographical errors, and bakit ang COA ay nagbigay sila ng yung AOM nila.
Punta pa tayo doon sa isa pang issue na naungkat dito, yung pagtanggap ng mga cash envelopes sa several officials within the OVP. I believe there are 4, Gloria Mercado, Resti Osias, Runa Catalan, and Michael Poa. They receive cash gifts from 12,000 to 50,000. I know that is a violation, am I correct, a violation of the Code of Conduct of Ethical Standards of Public Officials and Employees. And taking a look at the timeline of that, that kind of coincided with the expose of the or rather on the confidential funds being spent within 11 days. So maari ba nating makita yan as grounds for impeachment? What are you looking here in terms of recommendations with what you're seeing and also the patterns?
Well, apart from the audit observation memorandum na binibigay nila, nare-receive nila, because initially may nakikita na mga nafa-flag yung process ng pag-prepare ng mga attachment ng utilization report nila. Number 2, tama nga yung sinabi mo, there have been, I think, 4 or 5 employees in the Department of Education that came out and saying the same thing, that they've been receiving sobre daw, no? Sabi nila, it's not the usual, it's not the regular, process, it's not the regular gift that they normally receive, from the time that they started working at the Department of Education. Because one of them, I asked, how long have you been working at the department? Sabi niya, more than 30 years na, 37, si Miss Catalan. So it's, to her, she's an accountant. So sabi niya, hindi talaga siya regular she was nabibigay sa kanila allowances, kasi usually mga allowances nandiyan sa mga bonuses sa rata. Those are the sources from the regular funds. And so just a selective staff of the Department of Education that were actually receiving 25,000, if I'm not mistaken, no? And so it coincided kasi by the time na na-release yung confidential funds. So, and again, the question is, would that constitute, leading to impeachment, filing of articles of impeachment? I do not want to preempt the Committee on Good Government. As of now, we are actually focused on how we can go about with the allegations of the misuse of the confidential funds, and what are the reasons behind the COA saying that they have learned and they have discovered that more than, I guess, utilization of 125 million pesos as part of the confidential funds to be questionable. No? So that to me is still the focus of the committee. I guess the impeachment impeachment process would be, to me, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I noticed, how the committee is going, the direction of the committee, there seems to be no indication as of now, I would say, that impeachment would still be within the purview of the Committee on Good Government. But I don't know what will happen, because anything will happen in the future, diba? As we're talking here of utilization of funds. But then again, that's not within the purview of the Committee on Good Government, and that has not been discussed in the House of Representatives, to tell you honestly. There's no discussion or no talks about impeachment. In fact, yung mga impeachment na naririnig namin every time there's an interview like this, it's always comes from the Office of the Vice President. That's why every time na tinatanong kami, I for one, can categorically say that there's no discussion, there's no talk about impeachment. So if you ask me what's going to be the result of this committee on good government as far as the hearing on the utilization of confidential funds is concerned, I would tell you it's still ongoing, and it would be I would preempt what, for example, if I say to you that is going to be the direction, it is going to be the result of the committee, since we still have to hear
Okay.
from the 7 employees of the Department of
Yeah.
Education to really shed light on the allegation of the questionable receipts and the question on the utilization of the confidential funds. So hindi pa talaga nabubuo
Yeah.
yung the whole picture. Kaya nga po pinapasuspende pa yung hearing ng Committee on Good Government.
Okay, maraming salamat po. We look forward to unfolding more in the next hearing. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We have Lanao del Sur 1st District Representative Zia Adiong.
All right, let's check in on the weather because Typhoon Marce has made landfall over northern Cagayan this afternoon. But even before that, strong winds and torrential rains have battered several towns. Now, before the actual eye of the storm crossed the town, strong winds shook homes and establishments to their foundations. Ripped roofs and walls from homes, bent trees, and caused power outages. All this as cyclone wind signal in northern Cagayan was raised to number 4. But as the eye passed over Santa Ana town, there was a relatively calm moment before the town was again swallowed by the cyclone. And we see this in this video taken by a resident and posted on social media. In Gonzaga, waves crashed along the shoreline. Houses also succumbed to the strong winds. The worst, however, is not over as Pag-asa warns of potentially life-threatening conditions due to very destructive winds, storm surge inundation, and torrential rains over the northern portions of Cagayan, Apayao, and Ilocos Norte. Signal number 4 remains up over the northern portion of Cagayan, including the Babuyan Islands, the northern portion of Apayao, and the northern portion of Ilocos Norte. Signal number 3 is up over Batanes, the rest of Cagayan, the rest of Apayao, the rest of Ilocos Norte, the northern portion of Abra, and the northern portion of Ilocos Sur. Meanwhile, signal number 2 is in effect over the northern and central portions of Isabela, the rest of Abra, Kalinga, Mountain Province, the northern portion of Ifugao, the northern portion of Benguet, the rest of Ilocos Sur, and the northern portion of La Union. Meanwhile, the rest of La Union, Pangasinan, Ifugao, Benguet, Isabela, Quirino, and Nueva Vizcaya, as well as the northern and central portions of Aurora, the northern portion of Nueva Ecija, and the northern portion of Zambales are all under signal number 1. Marce is packing maximum sustained winds of 175 kilometers per hour near the center with gusts of up to 240 kmh.
Up next, we'll break down the results of the U.S. presidential elections and why the polls got it so wrong with geopolitical analyst Richard Hidarian. Keep it here on One News. Welcome back. You're still watching Big Story here on One News.
In the United States, Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris has conceded the election. In a speech at her alma mater, Howard University in Washington, D.C., Harris said she has called and congratulated President-elect Donald Trump, who won both the Electoral College and the popular vote.
But we must accept the results of this election. Earlier today, I spoke with President-elect Trump and congratulated him on his victory. I also told him that we will help him and his team with their transition, and that we will engage in a peaceful transfer of power.
A handful of votes are still being counted in Nevada and Arizona, but they won't change the outcome much. In the race to 270, Trump has garnered 295 electoral votes versus Harris's 226. Trump looks set to sweep all 7 swing states, which decided the election. Republicans also took back the Senate, while the House races are still being decided across the country. Exit polls show that it was Latino men who won it for Trump. This demographic typically leans blue, but turned red for the first time this election. An exit poll by Edison Research found that 55% of Hispanic Americans had voted for Trump, versus roughly 36% in 2020. And that's a whopping 18 percentage point difference. Ahead of Election Day, polls suggested that many Latinos were drawn to Trump's proposals to tighten immigration laws. All other demographics voted more or less as expected. Harris's loss is expected to trigger much soul-searching within the Democratic Party, especially if the Republicans also take the House. In her concession speech, Vice President Harris urged her supporters to accept the outcome, but to continue the fight.
The outcome of this election is not what we wanted, not what we fought for, not what we voted for, but hear me when I say, the light of America's promise will always burn bright. As long as we never give up, and as long as we keep fighting. I am here to say, while I concede this election, I do not concede the fight that fueled this campaign.
Let's try to get some answers now. We have with us tonight Richard Haydarian. He is the host of One News' show, The View from Manila, and also a senior lecturer at the UP Diliman Asian Center. I thought there was more to your introduction, but wow, I'm only sticking to 2 tonight.
Yeah, I'm wearing white just to say peace, because I think I made a lot of enemies over the past 72 hours on both sides, right? Whenever you post something that suggested something like this could happen, that other side would get angry. So
I know which way you
here
were
we are.
leaning, though, but the first thing I wanted to point out was how wrong the pollsters were again, at least the ones that are used by liberal media. For instance, the New York Times Siena College poll, right? They were way off. This was not even a close call, and for weeks we've been saying it's going to be razor-thin margins, there might be recounts, but within 24 hours we had a winner. What did you think about that?
Well, I mean, first of all, there are a couple of polls that didn't do too bad. I was looking at Atlantis Intel, which did very well over the past 3 election cycles, including 2022, because in 2016, the concern was the so-called silent Trump voters, people who didn't feel comfortable enough to say they were leaning towards Trump. But in that's 2016. But in 2022, there were a lot of women, particularly in more conservative communities, who didn't say they're going to vote for the other side, but actually turned out very strongly in favor of Democrats. So a lot of polls didn't get the 2016 and 2022 very well, but there are a couple of them that got it well. But honestly, for me, I would rather believe nowadays, Mudeng, that very cute hippo.
No, Mudeng got it right.
She
Mudeng got it
picked
right.
Trump, right? So I'd rather choose her than a lot of polls there, which I think are quite broken.
So forget the science, we're just going to go with the
because
animal.
the methodology is harder to work in a polarized environment when people are not trusting as much towards institutions. We thought it's only us in mainstream media. Apparently, even polling agencies are having problem in terms of getting sufficient.
Straightforward
But nevertheless, if you look at
answers.
the popular vote breakdown of, let's say, 47 to 51%, more or less still within the margin of error. But the electoral college projections are wildly off for most
What
of these
does it
polls.
say about media and, pollsters in general? Are we really going extinct? Because that's what they're saying.
Well,
They're
the
saying
ground
that-
is shifting, right? The
Right.
ground is shifting. In fact, I do agree with a lot of liberal commentators that perhaps if Kamala had agreed to do more of the podcasts, I saw Trump doing it with Lex Friedman, with Patrick Ben-David, and most importantly with Joe Rogan. And in fact, the Joe Rogan one was very important. It was almost 2-3 hours long. And Trump looked. I mean, we can disagree with the content, but
Yeah.
he looked quite fresh, strong, and authentic. And there were a lot of voters, including in Wisconsin, who were asked about that. They said we may not agree with the guy, we may have issues with him, but it seems like someone na pwede kong kausapin. Relatability. While Kamala didn't seem to do those kinds of rounds with
She was a
non-traditional
prosecutor.
media, etc. I mean, the SNL skit was great. Some of the other interviews she did great. But I felt they were not explorative enough, dynamic enough. Compare that to Obama, who was ahead of the curve
Yeah.
in fundraising, in communication skills. So the spontaneity and dynamism, we saw the very successful Obama campaign in 2008. We didn't see it as much this time, which makes you wonder what is wrong there. Is this a campaign strategy faux pas? Is it something about the candidate who, because one argument is had Biden dropped out earlier, and I think that's
Yeah.
becoming a dominant argument,
Right.
it would have given Kamala Harris enough time to build her momentum, her sense of self, so that she feels confident enough
I feel
to
like
do a 3-hour
maybe-
interview.
I feel like maybe they were also looking at the wrong polls. Maybe they thought, okay, well, we have a 3 percentage point lead in Nevada or Arizona or whatever. And
But
they
if you look
thought,
at the median vote, there were already alarming bells being set off, right? Remember, I posted something, a lot of our Democratic friends were not happy. Around 2 weeks before the elections, Biden had a 10-point lead in popular vote. Hillary had 6-point lead. Kamala was 1 point, essentially statistically tied. So she was already going to the final stretch, weakest by far, compared to any of the other predecessors, Democratic
Do you
predecessors.
think it was limited time that kind of determined her fate here? Like if she had more time, she would have seen
Probably.
what to improve on. Or do you think she was not the right candidate? Because there are also analysis saying that she is not. If they had chosen another Democrat, they would have a better chance.
It's always a conspiracy of factors, right? If Biden was as ready in 2023, then there would have been enough time for a proper primary. By the time it dropped, it was too late to do a proper primary, and Kamala seemed, they're in line. At the same time, you cannot disagree with the fact that Kamala never won a primary,
Yeah.
through traditional. She didn't win it back in 2020, and this time she more or less inherited it. So there is some argument that it's not necessarily that she's a woman or comes from a minority background. Is that there are other women or candidates or from minority background who could have probably fared better, but it's really hard to say. All of this is, post hoc analysis, and a lot of blame game is going to go around. But definitely Trump has to get also a lot of credit.
Well, some
Yeah,
are
yeah,
also
but-
saying it's she kind of is a stand-in for Biden, and she didn't make the break from Biden's policies
But-
early enough.
yeah,
I call that the Maro has problem. I'm going to be in
Wait.
trouble again.
So relatable.
Right. Because
Right.
you cannot be the
The
continuity
relatability.
candidate when everyone is turning against the incumbent. So she should have dropped Biden under the bus on a couple of issues, particularly economy and immigration.
She didn't
And she
distance.
didn't.
She didn't distance herself. I also think that the ceiling and the bar for women are just that much higher, despite all the progress we've made, because she wasn't held to the same standards as Trump was. But anyways, we don't want to dissect too much U.S. politics. We want to talk about the implications for the Philippines. And one of the things that Jovi Francisco, our co-anchor, he's in D.C. right now, talking
Right.
to a lot of the Phil-Ams there. One of the things he's hearing is that they're worried about immigration, about
Yeah,
what Trump will do on
absolutely.
immigration. I'm going to run you a soundbite. Take a listen to this so I could have your reaction.
As you know, there's very high so-called TNT population ng mga Filipinos sa Amerika. They will be very at risk. And if President-elect Trump will take a very inhumane approach to dealing with undocumented Filipinos in America.
What do you think?
You see, I respect any sovereign nations, push to, guard their borders. And it is a messy situation when it comes to immigration. Now, of course, you can also say it's also Trump's fault because he blocked the bipartisan bill from getting through. You could also have said the Democrats should have got it through last Christmas when they had the momentum. So we can litigate it in different ways. But the reality here is that I think there's a high risk because this is not just Trump winning White House. they're going to most likely retain the House, the lower house. They're going to get the Senate.
They have the
and
Senate.
This is where it gets interesting. It's not only a red trifecta, a Republican. It's a MAGA trifecta, or actually a quad, because the Supreme Court is majority conservative. In fact,
And
majority
he's going to get a chance to
conservative
appoint
Catholic.
more.
Yeah.
Right.
So
So
the House, the Senate,
we have never been here.
presidency,
Tell
and
me
the
who,
Supreme Court.
when was the last time we had a president in such a moment of dominance? So I won't be surprised with such a dominant performance that the more hardline elements will push for something that could be even overcompensation. Because there's huge demand right now for something drastic to be done. Again, we can argue about whether there's fear-mongering, there's racism, but that's the political reality. The gravity, I think, is more in the direction of overcompensation. So I'm worried. I'm worried, for a lot of Filipinos in gray legal area, a lot of Filipinos who want to rejoin their family. All of us have relatives in the U.S. or people who want to migrate there. Or I'm talking about even legal migration, not illegal migration. We're going to see a lot of toughening on that front. Or even if you have visa, when you enter U.S., I mean, throughout the years, I experienced that like certain cities at certain point, they'll have a double check, triple check. They're stricter. There's more questioning. So you can expect that even if you have visited the U.S. for the next 10 years or so, that doesn't necessarily mean that things are going to be exactly the same in the coming years or so. So because I think a lot of people are just very, I'm legal anyway. I have my visa. I have nothing to worry about. It's like, we don't know for sure because maybe Trump himself is a moderated version compared to the first version. I don't know. I cannot vouch for that. But there are many people inside the MAGA movement, not the Republican Party, who are far more conservative
Far
and
right.
protectionist stance. That I think people are not paying enough attention, because if you're listening to the podcast pros, you're looking at the Project 2025, you're talking to people in the conservative circles, I don't have a problem with all of them because I deal with them on the China question. Because I think on China, Trump could be very tough. Not Trump per se, but a lot of people, including Elbridge Colby, we had him on our show here, they believe Philippines has to be supported tougher in China. So those are good things. But you'll also hear a lot of things about social issues, domestic issues. So I think that speech was very important by Kamala, right? Because that's the proper way of saying it. Not Kamala or Kamala, it's Kamala. I asked my friends from southern India yesterday, right? It was right for her to say, the elections is over, but the fight is not necessarily over. And I won't be surprised, 6 months from now, even earlier, you're going to see the polarization factor coming back and potentially with vengeance. I hope I'm wrong.
Why does this remind me of
I was
the
gonna
2022 elections
I
here
was
in the
gonna
Philippines?
say,
Like,
there are so many parallels.
President
VP
Bongbong Marcos
Lenny
winning the popular vote here in the country. What do we have to learn from this? Incoming President Trump
Right.
using the podcast route to
Right.
get more voters out there. Do you think that could possibly happen here, with mainstream media losing more of its grip
Right.
on deciding the fate of the elections?
I saw the
also-
blazer, the VP thing.
But also
For
the
me-
fact that the working class gravitated towards Marcos more as well. It was the same issue.
For me,
They-
if Duterte's come back in 2020, that's a better parallel, right? That's a better parallel.
I see a better parallel.
Yeah,
to
because
2020
everyone
as well.
thought Trump is over. I mean, last year at this point, people thought it's over, right? People thought the Republicans will not accept him anymore. Nikki Haley had some momentum. DeSantis was seen as an early potential contender. I talked to a lot of those Republicans in South Carolina, Georgia earlier this year. And then suddenly came back with a vengeance and very strong. So that's why you never underestimate populists and populist brand, because they may go into hibernation mode. You might think they're done. And then if they survive that phase, and they can come back very
and
strong.
former President Duterte can still run, right? Because
Yes,
he's
and
only had
Sarah,
one term.
yeah, and Sarah is
She can run, but the
unless she's
father can
impeached
also
or
run.
something, right? Exactly. So I think the lesson here is not only for liberals in the U.S. who do soul searching, you correctly mentioned, but also here in the Philippines, that getting A-list actors is great, but getting A-list actors and not doing the spontaneous stuff of podcasters, etc., it could backfire, because the populists will say, of course you got the A-list actor because you're elite, you're oligarch, and that was exactly what Trump did. You see, all these A-list actors, they never felt inflation. They're not hurt by immigration. You ordinary folks, us podcasters. So it actually amplifies
Pero working
the
class
populist
ang
argument.
target ni Kamala sa kanyang campaign. I mean, taking a look at them, putting them side by side, it is actually Donald Trump who is part of the elite.
The housing she provided was more middle class. They credit for middle class and business, etc. But on inflation, what did she say that was going to reassure people that things are going to look better? I mean, she didn't even try to explain as well as she could have that the inflation is not even their fault. So I felt on the economy and immigration part, I said that even during the debate, that he was. But having said that, I am not discounting the possibility that, racism or sexism or those factors could also be at play. I just don't like this idea that we always bring it down to that. Like in Philippines, it's only disinformation. Or in US, it must be because
It's
it's
a number of
misogyny.
factors.
It could be a factor, but there could
It's
be
a-
other
a
factors,
number of
including
factors.
campaign, organizational
Or calling,
faults.
Having
calling
said
the
that-
voters dumb, right?
Oh, that's the worst thing you can do. Voter blaming is the worst thing you can do.
Having
yeah.
said that, Trump also didn't say much about inflation, right? He just promised to cut it down, and he kept harking back to 4 years ago when inflation was down because there was the COVID pandemic, right?
I have relatives in the
people were
U.S.
not
who
spending.
keep on telling me about the checks they got during pandemic that had
correct.
Trump's name there.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's not Trump's money. It's Congress who's passed it.
and maybe
But
that's
it
why
worked.
people felt rich
It
back then.
probably
They
worked with
weren't
the
spending,
Latino,
they
with
were
the
getting
African-American
ayuda.
community.
Right,
Because
exactly.
it's ayuda
Yeah.
at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It works.
But-
It's politics. Unfortunately, it's not a...
I've heard analysis saying that they're romanticizing the Trump era.
Years.
Yeah.
And the reference.
prior to the-
So that's why
right,
in
before
voting,
everything.
it's called reference bias. When you
Right.
make a judgment, what are you comparing it to? So it looks like Trump years are far
Right.
enough into their memory for them to. It's nostalgia.
Okay.
Nostalgia for 4 years
we're
earlier.
we're just gonna say that he is beloved by God, as some people say.
Oh,
We're
and by
not
the way,
really-
he survived 2 assassinations.
Exactly.
exactly.
We are gonna
It's hard to beat that,
leave
yeah.
that there for tonight. We'll have you back on another night. Thank you so much for joining us, Richard Darren, host of The View from Manila.
Not that other than.
And I think we have talked off all the time that we have for the show tonight.
Can we have another hour of this? Maybe in a
With
podcast?
Richard, that's gonna be another show.
Soon. Seems to work.
Okay, the floor director is
Right?
angry.
Oh, we are on news all sides all the time.
Thanks for tuning in. Have a good night.
Stay tuned because coming up next is Play-by-Play with Andre Felix and Cheska Liton Calao.
You know what, Reg, and Sean? We should also have Richard on the show.
Oh yeah, he
Kung
can also
nabitin
do
pa siya dyan.
Smart guys. More than just a pretty face.
Since this morning pa yan Since this morning pa yan si Richard grabe. But great thoughts, insights as always from Richard Darian. And thank you, ladies, of the big story. Well, on to sports this time. We've got exciting games coming your way from the NBA, plus an interview with TNT's Calvin Oftana about the PBA Governors Cup Finals.
And the PVL with its final decision on Alohi Robbins Hardy just days before a new conference begins.
I'm Andre Felix.
And I'm Cheska Liton Calao.
And here's tonight's play-by-play.
Left side. Oh, the pass! The number one. Bakuna's rejecting.